We are recording today's session just like we did the session last week, and we'll get it posted on our school website as soon as we can. So you'll have all of this to watch and listen back to if you'd like to do so. And also so that people that weren't able to attend today can watch it. And noon seems like a funny time for a school meeting. So I just wanted to start with the reasoning behind that. Is we know we have people in our community that cannot come to the evening events because they may work evenings or have a conflict. So we put one in the middle of the day. We did a 5:30 last week, and we're doing a 4:30 this afternoon so that we can try to reach as many people as possible to take their questions. So the format right in the room right now with me, we're socially distanced, but me and Mrs. Jones and Mr. Ratty are all here together. And the way that we worked it last time, and we got some positive feedback, was that for the most part, you're going to see me on the camera. But they'll be working and watching the chat and answering questions through the chat as we go along. And if there's some thanks, Jen. And if there's some questions that they need to refer over to me, then I'll certainly answer those, and some will work together as a group. But we'll try to separate them out so that we're all able to keep up with folks throughout this, so that we don't get to the end and have many questions that have been unanswered. So we'll work through in that fashion. And now, if I'm doing this correctly, everybody should have my video and the sound, and it looks like that is correct. So I want to share my screen, and we won't have a long presentation. But there are just a few things, a few jumping off points that we want to share before we get into it. And okay, let's see. Yep, so as you can see, we're going to do our second session right now. I will say that we had started scheduling these sessions. We had scheduled our first session before the governor came out and made some comments about the plans that school had submitted, and said he was going to mandate all of us to have community forums for parents to provide feedback to us, and staff forums to provide feedback to school districts. We had scheduled our first set, the ones that occurred last week, prior to him coming out and making that mandate. And ours was always in to have more as needed. So us having to go to 3, it isn't anything that was done because we were reacting to him. We were proactive in scheduling the first set last week before the mandate came out. So I just wanted to put that out there for folks. So a few things that affect the whole school, and some questions that we've received from parents and community members in the past. I'm going to start with just a few of those, and I have written them down and going through them. I want to go through them with you. And first, I'll say by thanking everybody for their patience. There's a lot changing with schools, and there's a lot changing in your life, probably at work, and a lot changing with daycare and things like that. So thanks to everybody for their patience. Community members, staff members, I see there's some staff members on here too, parents, grandparents, and students. And we're working through the guidance, and the guidance is still changing, although the changes are getting smaller and we're getting more clarification as we get closer to school. And so we're incorporating that into our plan, as well as the day-to-day operation of school as we start to open back up. And where do I find stuff about reopening? I like to keep showing off that we're putting it all on the web, and you can go to www.fortedward.org, and you can see the reopening plan and information in there. I did have to submit an addendum to the state of New York last Friday was the deadline. That is now submitted there as well. Thanks to Mr. Herman for getting that posted up there very quickly last Friday when it was completed. I also want to draw your attention to the remote learning preference form. So many parents have been looking at the reopening plan and making decisions for their children. The way to tell us about that decision, if you're choosing for your children to attend virtually only or remotely only, the way to do that is to go on and complete that survey, and that will provide us with your contact information. It will also help us to finalize classroom numbers across all grade levels, because that's the last piece of the puzzle here, is to know exactly how many students we're going to have. And that number of remote-only learners has grown significantly just since last week. So If that's what you're choosing for your children, the sooner you can fill that out for us, the better, because that helps us get the plan in place for everyone as we're coming back to school. Other new information, which is not on the website yet, but last night at the school board meeting, the school board voted and approved to move all of our superintendent's conference days to that first week that would normally be class days for students. So our students here at Fort Edward will not start classes of any kind until Monday, September 14th. Those 4 days in the week previous, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday after Labor Day, will all be superintendent's conference days to try to make the reentry of our students as smooth as possible, because there's certainly a lot of new stuff for our staff to talk about and learn about, and information for the administrative staff to share with our teachers and support staff, as well as make those fine-tuning adjustments before students come back in. So I wanted to get that out there. I'll get something out publicly through telephone call and through our social media as soon as I can, and we'll publish an updated calendar. Additionally, want to get out there to anybody who's on the call. If you know a family who is planning on having a pre-K student this year, we need to hear from them. We're going to get our pre-K packets on the school website if they're not already there. I haven't had a chance to check that yet today, but we'll get them out there. We have to have firm pre-K numbers by next Thursday. And the school board is going to be making some pretty difficult decisions, possibly centered around pre-K. And it will be helpful to know how many students we have and families we have that are looking for enrollment into students in pre-K. As you are all aware, there are many budget concerns with the Fort Edward School District. There are also many budget concerns across the state of New York. And one of those is that we're only going to receive 80% of the aid we were supposed to receive for pre-kindergarten. And they're saying it will be reduced by at least 20%. So it could be reduced by more, which means we may not be able to run that program based on the funds we're given by the state of New York and based on our current budget situation here in Fort Edward. So we want to know how many parents are looking to get pre-Kers enrolled. So if you can tell those parents, if you're one of those parents, if you can reach out to the school offices, to Mrs. Carpenter, lcarpenter@fortedward.org. She can provide the packet, and that way we'll have you on a list of people who are looking to enroll in pre-K. That would be very helpful. So that's new items just from last evening. One that's a little bit older, but I'm going to make some clarification on. In our plan, the reopening plan, it does speak to busing. And I had a parent say, I didn't think there was busing this year, but I see it's in your plan. Can you please explain? So here's the explanation. It is correct. One of the reductions in our budget was the day-to-day busing of regular education elementary students. So those pre-K through third grade students that have been bused in previous years are no longer going to be bused. The only busing that will be occurring for Fort Edward students will be those that have transportation included in their individualized education plan, or if they're a homeless student with protections by the McKinney-Vento Act, or students who are going to CTE programs after they originally arrive here at the district. The reason why we have to have that busing, the busing protocols in our plan, is because we are going to have to move those students. We are going to transport them. And we do have to have the protocols in for cleaning the buses in there. But it does not mean that we have reinstated transportation. Our budget constraints do not allow us to do so. A lot of folks have asked about outside. As of right now, the outside grounds are still closed to visitors and any use. The reason for that is because in order to open your grounds, you have to have personnel available to take care of social distancing concerns, as well as to disinfect the outside playground area, anything that people could be touching out there. And right now, during the summertime, we don't have that staff. So we will be using the playground when school opens. We will be disinfecting it when school opens, but we'll be closing it after the school day ends to outside use, because we have to be able to disinfect the playground for it to be ready for the next day's use, and therefore we can't allow people to be there on it during the evenings or on the school grounds. Some people have asked about tents outdoors and temporary structures like that. Right now, we're not able to do so. In order to erect a tent, you actually have to get an architect to approve the tent that you're going to put up and draw a plan for the tent that you're going to put up and have it approved through the State Education Department Office of Facilities Management. So there's a lot to jump through, and there are significant associated costs with that, but we are, teachers are able to take students outdoors for a lesson, let's say, on a day when weather is good, as long as we're taking care of the appropriate safety needs for students. One easy example for me to use is if you're taking students outside, you need to be cognizant if you have a student with a bee allergy or some other allergen that could be outside. You also need to know how you're going to re-enter the building in case of emergency, or where our outside evacuation area is in case of an emergency inside the building that would make you want to get away from the building. And that information is available to teachers as they come back. Let's see. After school daycare, Mrs. Jones has been working for quite some time with a group. We're close. There is some concern of whether or not I'm legally allowed to allow them to use our building for the after school daycare due to the contingent budget. So I'm working on getting that answer, but they are ready to hold an after school childcare program here in our cafeteria. And there's a couple of other backup areas for their program. But that would be a cost that the parents would have to pay. And based on what Mrs. Jones has said in a previous session, they do accept some types of county and social services aid for payment. More to come on that once we're sure that they can be here. There's a lot of questions about PPE and sanitizers and signage and things like that. And I kind of have been showing people some of the stuff that we have. So we have over 32 gallons of this New York State hand sanitizer. We're well prepared with hand sanitizer. We also have just about 200 of these face shields, and we have over 2,000 masks. And we have some of the clear masks available as well for folks teaching in the primary grades, where seeing the lips function and learning to read and sound out words is something that has to happen. So we have those items here. We also have gloves, all those types of things. Additionally, the school bought 2 industrial foggers and the appropriate chemicals for those so that the rooms can be fogged and disinfected every single evening using those devices without it taking our staff an extra shift to do so. So they'll be cleaning the rooms and then disinfecting every single night with the foggers to get started. Let's see. Anything that's new and the changes, again, I just want to put out there. It'll be on the website. We'll post it. We're also going to use our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get things out. We'll also be using the caller system, the robocaller system, to keep people engaged in what's going on. One additional thing that we're asking is that students, we're asking that they bring a water bottle that they can use, a reusable water bottle, because we are not going to be using the drinking fountains, but we were able to install last year the bottle filler stations. There's one on each floor of the high school, and there's one on each floor of the elementary school, as well as one near the gymnasium. We have those around the school. So we're not able to use the water fountains as we normally would, but we have the bottle filling stations that we can use. And we're also asking parents and staff members to provide their own masks. And we're looking at reusable cloth masks. Ideally, a student or a staff member would have 2 that they would bring themselves. That way, if there's a malfunction of a mask, it breaks or gets soiled or gets lost, there's a backup for a student. But again, we have appropriate backups here that we will provide if necessary, so that every student and every staff member has the appropriate mask to be here in attendance at school. But we are asking that send your children to school with a mask. And it would be great if we could start. I'm sure that you're going to places to do some shopping and things like that. If you could start trying to help your children, if you haven't already done so, with how to properly wear a mask and talk about why it's important, that would be very helpful to us as we come back to school. We'll be doing some education on that as well. So that's what I had for kind of initial thoughts and initial questions that have come up over and over again. And I know that Mrs. Jones and Mr. Ratty are rattling through the chat box, answering the questions that come up there. And I can, I'm going to open the chat up on my screen as well so that I can see them now.
Question about limiting the art teacher and the programs and what that looked like. Tara either.
Yep.
Sheriff. Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at, I see the one about the art and music in the classroom. So right now, our budget did not allow us to buy any teaching supplies. The contingent budget, that was one of the reductions we made. So we have the supplies that we have on hand. As far as staffing goes, we did have to cut an art teacher from this year's budget. In the elementary school, we are going to be doing art by using one of our elementary teachers that will be going from classroom to classroom. So there will be art instruction going on. Her supplies are limited to whatever is in the room left over from last year and years previous. So she is that specific teacher is working through that possibility right now, and actually has some, I spoke with her this weekend, has some good ideas for that. As far as music goes, we had been looking to replace Mrs. Halloran with at least a 0.5 teacher because Mrs. Halloran retired. We are unable to do so because that's one of the reductions we had to make in the contingent budget, but we still have one music teacher for grades K through 12. Mr. Kopp's still with us as a full-time music teacher. So he's working through the courses that we're going to offer, although it's going to be limited and the structure is going to be different than in previous years. So we are going to have, and in the high school, the art teacher right now, that position remains intact. So I'm looking at the chat here. Yeah, so the specific grade levels that'll be able to access the band and chorus, we don't have the final details on that. I know that Mr. Ratty and Mrs. Jones have had a conversation with Mr. Kopp, and they're working through that. I can tell you that with the 6 through 12, there had normally been like a 6, 7, 8 chorus, and then the 9 through 12 chorus. That will not be the case this year. There'll be one chorus that will have all students that are in it, and the same for the band. And we have not worked out how the 5th grade integrates into that, or if we'll even be able to do so this year. Yeah. So the fever question so far, yeah, the fever is the same. They need to be fever free without medication for the same time frame as previous. So every person who comes with a fever is cannot be sent out of school for when you talk about a positive case of COVID, where they're talking about the 10 days in isolation and having testing done and all those types of things. A lot of students present with fevers here at school. We're going to be using, in conjunction with the Department of Health for Washington County, the guidelines they provide us. And right now, they're saying that if a fever is just a fever with no additional symptoms, at this point, please keep following your regular protocols. If something changes with that over the next couple of weeks, because there are still conversations between the local Department of Health, which for us is Washington County, and the New York State Department of Health, which is their governing body, on some of these items to be clarified for us. I was on a call this morning with a group of superintendents, and those are some of the things we're asking for. And we want to try to have guidance that matches both what New York State is saying and what Washington County is saying. We can't have two different documents or two different sets of rules that we're trying to follow. So they're saying that there'll be an update memo coming out about some of those items that are still a little bit different between local departments and the overall state health department. In the end, we're required to cooperate with our local health department. They are the ones that we have to turn to for anything about any kind of health emergency, including COVID, including these questions about fevers. And we know that every situation isn't going to fit into a nice little box for us. So they're going to be very busy people. I believe the Washington County Department of Health is 3 people with some ancillary staff in the public safety realm that help out with that department or are kind of attached to that department in many ways. So we'll keep working with them. I'm going to go back up through to see if I. Yeah, so just looking to see. Yep. Other questions out there from folks again, we didn't have a real long spiel to share, but I'm going to go back over here. Let's see. And so I think I'm still sharing. Yes, I am. So you can see my screen. Again, I already said that there was another one at 4:30. There's going to be another one today at 4:30. And I just keep pushing out there that we're going to continue to use that website. We're going to keep pushing information out as much as we can. That being said, there's still a lot of work to be done around the building. We have moved an incredible amount of furniture out of the building. By we, I mean the maintenance staff and cleaning staff. And you'll see if you happen to be driving by and the doors are open on the bus garage, you'll see that there's a whole bay full of furniture, and we still have more to move out. And again, we're just waiting. We're really waiting. We need those final surveys to come in on people who are looking to go full remote for the first 10 weeks. And that's what we're asking. If you're going remote, you have to go remote for 10 weeks because we can't facilitate students moving in and out and having to add students to classrooms because it throws off our counts. It makes we have to put our desks someplace, which means we have to move all the desks. And we may have to open up an additional classroom inside the building that would be remote with maybe a teaching assistant. So that takes some time. Conversely, some people have said, well, what if school starts and, a few days in, my student's very concerned or I become very concerned. Can I go from in-person to remote at that time? The answer right now that I'm giving everybody consistently is that yes, as long as people are understanding and that you have the appropriate materials for your student to go remote while the school districts works on helping you with those needs. If you tell us on a Tuesday that you're going all remote, there's not a great chance of us having everything your child would need ready for Wednesday. But if people are reasonable, then yeah, I would understand that completely. People can make a change in that direction much more easily than in the opposite direction.
We're looking to schedule a couple of meetings. One, that first week, I'm looking at September 2nd, is a meeting for the parents of remote learners, as well as some other updates a bit closer.
Yep. So
the supply drop off.
You guys want each? So
Sure, yeah.
you want each? So I'm going to let Mr. Ratty making a couple good points. I'll let Mr. Ratty talk for a minute, Mrs. Jones talk for a minute, and I'll mute mine so we don't get feedback. So if you hear some feedback when we first do that, I will do that, and that will hopefully fix it.
Sorry.
It's okay.
All right. So I think my sound should be good. So Mrs. Jones and I have been working on a few other student support, family support meetings over the next few weeks here. The one that I'm looking at really to get going is September 2nd or 3rd, but I'm looking at September 2nd at 5:30 p.m. I'm looking to schedule a meeting for all of the parents and families of the students that are choosing the remote option, the remote learning option. There are certainly some logistical issues we want to put in place, address some concerns from that point, and really lay out kind of a foundational approach of what the remote learning process will look like. It's going to be different than it was in the spring. And that is the one thing we're really trying to get at. It is going to be a much more efficiently run, a much more effectively run system than it was this spring. We put a lot of work into ensuring that all of the students have an equal opportunity for education and equity throughout the programming. I've received a lot of input from staff, administration, all support staff. Everyone has come together and how can we best support these students with laying out some expectations that there's going to be some accountability with the remote process. So again, that's going to be at 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 2nd. And I'll lay out kind of similar to what Mr. Ward has done here so far. I'll lay out kind of the 101 of what you need to know, what your students need to know, and what the expectations are. And then also opening up to some teacher input, and then finally including a parent Q&A for those parents of the remote learners. We understand that in grades 6 through 12 there'll be the alternating schedule, but I'm really looking to address it to those families that have chosen the all remote process. There is certainly some planning that we need to do prior to making that adjustment and that change. So that'll be Wednesday, September 2nd at 5:30 p.m. I know Mrs. Jones is also looking to add on to a supply pickup possibly.
Sure. Yep.
And there we go.
Okay, hello. So a couple of things to mention. The first is that Mr. Ratty and I are working on our principal letters that include the teacher assignments and so forth. With the number of families that are opting to do virtual learning only, this has changed our class list configurations quite a bit. So the teacher letters, which normally go out this week, it may be more like the end of this week or early next week. In order to make the class lists balanced and fair, we're still going to have to make a few changes here and there. So I would urge you, please, if you're considering doing the virtual learning option, to think about that carefully and make your choice by filling out the survey that's on our website. Also, there will be, we do have a lot of school supplies that have been donated to our school. And Mr. Ratty and I are planning a school supply giveaway for next Friday, which is the 28th of August. You should certainly have your teacher assignment and your school supply list by then. So we're planning a school supply giveaway from 9 until 11 a.m. while supplies last, so that you can come and pick up any items that your student may need, so that nobody has to spend too much money on buying school supplies. So that'll be happening next week, and Mr. Ratty and I will publicize that and send out announcements and such like that. Mrs. Gay asks, what will pickup look like at the end of the day for K through 3 kids? It's going to look, there you go. It's going to look exactly the same. In the past, we've had our parent pickup in the afternoon down to between 5 and 10 minutes, because there's going to be all of our kids getting picked up that way. It'll probably be more like 10 to 20 minutes. But parents will still have to come in with their proper ID. They'll sign their child out and exit right through the front doors. There will have to be one-way traffic in the halls and social distancing with masks on and so forth, but we'll still be ensuring the safety of our students by making sure they're signed out to the correct parent.
Yeah, and just jumping back in about the screening, Tara's question. So right now, we had started the last session with parents talking about doing it through a paper note that comes into us, small slip of paper that says, my student is under this temperature and has not had these symptoms. And I talked last time about how we were going to screen staff, and that staff we're going to be able to use an online Google form to provide that information ahead of time. So some people heard that and said, well, can we do that for parents as well? And I'm like, yeah, we can do that for parents as well, if that will work. So we're looking at having a couple of different ways. Screening for everybody. So they would be separate tools, but they're very, very similar. Where you would be able to go on and be able to say, click a box that says, my child's temperature is under 100 degrees, and my child does not have these symptoms. That would go directly into a spreadsheet that only the appropriate staff here at school can see. It would not be a public spreadsheet, and that would take care of the screening for the day. So when your child would get here, they would just say, my parent pre-screened me. They filled out the survey. They filled out the online survey, and we'll get them through the line. We'll have some children that are also coming in with a paper slip that says, hey, my parent screened me, and we'll get them through the line. And we'll have some folks who weren't pre-screened. And we have purchased the infrared no-touch thermometers. We have 5 of those on hand here in the district. So anybody who hasn't been pre-screened, or somebody who lost their little note, or if we have a parent a student who says they were screened by their parent and they put the information online and we can't find it, we're going to rescreen with the infrared thermometer, because we do have to have everybody screened as they enter the building every day. It is not required, however, that they all be screened on site. They can be pre-screened by parents, and staff members can pre-screen at home before they come to work. And certainly the larger number of folks that pre-screen, that's going to be very helpful for us in getting students in the building. That's going to take a little bit of patience the first couple of days. We're going to have a good system worked out, but certainly as we try to train everybody, including the young people coming into our building, it's going to be slow to start, and we understand that. We're hoping that you'll be patient with us. We do have an isolation room, so that if somebody fails a screening, it is close to the front entrance. It is an air-conditioned space, and it will be supervised as we always would, but as is required by the guidance put out in New York State. We would never have a child who would fail the screening in a room where they weren't supervised. So we're working on that. Over near the front of the building on K Street, there's going to be some small circles on the ground. I think they're like 6 or 8 inches. We're going to paint those, and they're going to be 6 feet apart in all directions. As you know, we have many students who wait outside in the morning. When kids come to school, if they're coming in for breakfast, we're going to be coming through the main K Street entrance. They're either going to have their screening done, and they're going to tell the staff member that, and we're going to double check it and then let them in, or they're going to be screened by us, by appropriate staff, and then they're going to go to if they're here before 8 o'clock, they're going to be going to the gymnasium, the big gym, and the breakfast will be served as people enter the big gym. People will not be going down to the cafeteria because we're trying to limit the number of people moving to different spaces first thing in the morning, and because our cafeteria will only hold about 38 to 40 people socially distanced, and we have to have more students than that be able to access breakfast. So they'll be able to take their breakfast into the gym. Inside the gym, there'll be desks and chairs set up, and the bleachers will be open, and those will be at the appropriate level of social distancing as well. So it won't just be bleachers full of students like it has been in the past. So we're going to need your help there too. And we'll be working with kids a ton this year on, hey, we get that that's your friend, and yep, if you want to sit next to each other, that's great, but next to each other means 6 feet apart. And that means you're in this desk and they're in that desk, or you're on this X on the bleachers and they're on that X on the bleachers. And then when it's time to go to class, they'll be dismissed from the gym a grade level at a time, 6 feet apart. But that's the ones who are coming in for breakfast, or the ones who are coming in because that's where their parents are directing them to go. We have people who like to stand out on the sidewalk. That's what those circles will be for. And the same for dismissal at the end of the day. We'll have those 6-foot circles leading into the regular dismissal entrance, but you'll see over by the high school entry door, you're going to see a couple of rows 6 feet apart for the high school students, middle and high school students to stand on. If they're not coming in for breakfast in the morning, they can stand on one of those circles, and when it's time for them to come in, they'll come in through the high school entrance there next to the guidance office or Mr. Ratty's office. And if you remember it from many years ago, I think that's where Mindy used to be a long time ago. Or maybe John Godfrey if you've been around for a real long time. So we're gonna, when 8 o'clock comes, we're gonna split the entrance so that middle and high school are going through, and those double doors over there on the 1924 building, and our younger students are going in over through the main entrance on K Street towards the elementary school. But prior to 8 o'clock, anybody who's coming in for breakfast or just because they want to come in, we're asking them not to get here before 1:15. And then once they go in, they're not going back out. We do have some middle and high school students that are used to, they go in, they eat their breakfast, and they go back outside with their friends. Once somebody's come in and been screened, they got to stay in. We can't have to rescreen people. So that's a conversation to be had. If you have a student who's in the 6 through 12 who used to go back out, and you may not even know, so please ask that question. We're going to let them know nicely that, hey, once you go in, we're going to keep you in till the end of the day. So they might not want to get there as early if they know they have to go in and stay inside, but they want to have breakfast. We want everybody to be able to eat. We want people to be able to socialize some before the school day starts. We just can't manage people, starting at 7 a.m. or starting at 7:30 a.m. We're asking that the students who are walking to school and going to stay out front try to run their schedule so they're getting there about 1:15. That's what we're trying to do. Other questions out there, or anything that we maybe talked about last time that you can think of that we haven't? I went through my notes. Yeah. Yeah, so I talked briefly about the playground, but yeah, we are asking for extended social distancing while students are outside, especially if they're engaged in physical activities. So we're looking for that double social distancing of 12 to 15 feet. We are disinfecting the playground as well twice a day. So once midday, and then once at the end of the day to have it ready for the next morning. And lunch would operate the same way as breakfast. So lunch is going to be served just outside the gymnasium, and that does not mean that all of our lunches will be cold. We're working with a new lunch management group this year. It's actually the Capital Region BOCES is taking over. Airmark is not with us anymore, and they have purchased some. They call them hot boxes that they can put the hot meals in. They can bring them from the cafeteria up the elevator, have them in the hallway, either just outside the gymnasium or just inside the gymnasium. We haven't gotten to the actual nuts and bolts of that. The people are going to be back up again. And they'll set their lineup in there so the student would enter the gymnasium at one end. They'd get their meal. They're either going to sit at one of the desks or chairs, or if they wanted to, they could sit on the bleacher in one of those socially distanced areas again. They would eat their lunch there. There'll be appropriate supervision. Likely we'll have the curtain in the middle of the gymnasium closed because sometimes we have multiple grade levels of students in there, so it'll depend on the groups in there. But that's where lunch would be. And when lunch is over, we're going to try to do one-way traffic, right? The plan is so far that they would enter the cafeteria on the, what's that going to be called? I'll call it the south end, the end nearest the girls' locker room, the end nearest the high school building, I should say. That's where everybody goes in, and they're all going to go out on the other side so we don't have people crisscrossing in the doorways there. Students can absolutely still bring their own lunches. We're asking that food not be shared. As much as I grew up on a farm, and I hate to see food wasted. I've eaten plenty of food off of students' trays when they were going to throw it in the garbage. But we all have to break that habit and know that if somebody else has touched it, we should not be sharing it. The risk is not worth the reward. And I'm hoping that we're going to be working on that with our students, teaching them that same thing at home. If you can help with that in any way, we really appreciate it. That Twinkie looks great, but if 3 people have touched it, please don't. We can get you your own Twinkie when you get home, or a conversation like that. That's the one I would have to have in my house anyways. Anything that we went screening and pickup. Thank you for the people who brought that up, because that was definitely something we talked about last time quite a bit.
That we will have a school nurse.
Yeah. So people have asked about the school nurse. We have been interviewing folks for the school nurse's position. We have some appropriate applicants. The interviewing actually concludes this evening. And then we're hoping to have the successful candidate on board as of our special board meeting, which will be next Thursday at 5:30. That meeting is specifically for staffing. We have some positions that we still have to fill. The nurse is obviously a key position, and we've got some teaching positions in the high school that we're still staffing. Other questions out there from folks? And I think what Mr. Ratty and Mrs. Jones shared about how we're going to have to get some more information out, and we're probably going to have another session. I think that most likely the week before school starts, we're going to have to be coming on again to talk about some nuts and bolts of this. So we're providing you the information as it's up to date right now. And some things could change. We're hoping that the changes are minor, but certainly we want to provide any updated information as best we can. Yeah, so I'm trying to think if I see your question, Chris. So if you have sent the virtual option, so nothing yet, and you said you came in a little late, but Mr. Ratty had mentioned that we're going to do a meeting on Wednesday, September 2nd at 5:30. Once we have some final numbers to set some expectations, and by then we're hoping to have worked out the details. But the details depend upon the overall number, and that's kind of the driving factor of things. But we're working on it. So if you just scratch that in, so that will show up on our virtual meeting list once we get it there on the school website. And you'll be able to get in the same way you got into this link today.
Just note, yeah. I would just note that if she hasn't heard already, it will be taking place synchronously at the same time that a normal
Yep.
schedule. So
Yes, so with the virtual instruction, we are prioritizing synchronous learning, which means access to teachers at the same time that the normal classes would be. Although we have to work that model out with our teachers because some of the things that teachers are doing in the classroom, a great idea isn't for 10 students to be on watching the side of a teacher's face while they're teaching. And there's certainly some privacy concerns about turning that camera and having all the students in a classroom being streamed out to everybody outside of school. So we're working on that. Some teachers have come in with some ideas, and Mr. Ratty and Mrs. Jones have been fielding those. I will give you an example, but it doesn't mean that this is how it's going to be. So an example would be that, yes, teachers making contact during English class every day with all the students, the ones that are in class, the ones that are online, but maybe the ones that are in class are working on a certain assignment. Maybe the ones at home are working on a different assignment. I'm not sure which grade level your children in, I'm sorry. And then the next day it would switch. But that way the teacher could say, hey, you people at home, you're working on X, Y, and Z. And is there any questions about X, Y, and Z? Okay, I'm going to give you 15 more minutes to work on that. In the meantime, they go back and do some more interaction with this group of kids. But we want to have we have to have daily interaction with every student. The state's requiring it. That's what's best for kids anyways. It might not just look exactly the same, the interaction for a kid at home as opposed to a kid here. We want to do something that makes sense. And looking at the side of somebody's head for 40 minutes times 6 periods a day is not going to make the most sense to a lot of people. Other questions? So I'm going to see. Yeah. So the principals talked about the slide I have up there already, that the letters are going to be going out. We realize there's been significant hurdles and challenges that we've been working through here, and the same for you folks in your lives. I understand that completely. So that's delaying the letters and things a little bit. But they'll get out there, and like they said, probably the end of this week, beginning of next week, which is about a week later than normal. If we can be a week later than normal with everything that's going on, I want to tell you that I feel I'm disappointed that we have to be late at all, but I feel pretty good that we're only a week behind with everything that we've had to try to overcome this summer, and we'll continue to overcome together as a team. But if there's no further questions, we'll hang out for a few minutes and just wait in case something comes to mind. But if there's no further questions, that's what we had for you today. And if you're coming back on at 4:30, if you're willing and able, you're going to see very similar, other than the feedback that you would get from the questions that are asked by parents and community members, which is great. It's helped us to think of some things that we had not thought of before. To be perfectly honest, each of the sessions have been good for us to hear. And it allows us to verbalize some of the stuff that we've thought about and work through. And that's helpful for us too. So we'll give it a couple minutes, and if everybody is good for now, we'll go from there. Some important dates: that remote only Wednesday, September 2nd, and I'm just going to go backwards on. I'm going to go back to. I think I can get back to the beginning of this, and just want to go back for anybody who joined late, and just because there was a question about the remote only option. So if you can see that, there's the green bar right there. If you were looking to make that choice for your children, that's where you would click. And I'm going to actually go in there, and there's not a lot of questions. We do need some information from you to do that. We need your email address because we want it. That's how we're going to set up those meetings. And you have to give us some information. What grade is your child? And not that we can't look it up, but it's going to help us because it provides it all in a spreadsheet to us. And at the end, you're checking the attestation, which basically means that you understand that once you say remote, you're remote for 10 weeks, so that we can manage the numbers of students here in school. So I wanted to share that. And if you're looking for updates on their reopening plan and any other information, you can go to the yellow tab, reopening plan. And if you're looking for information on our virtual meetings, like that Wednesday, September 2nd at 5:30, the link is not under the virtual meeting tab yet, but it will be. We'll get it put out there. And any of the other things that we've done, you can look at, you can see Friday's session if you wanted to watch Friday's recorded session. That one was about an hour and 20 minutes, I think.
There was some sweet potatoes in that one.
Yeah, there was some great questions, and we tried to go through those to start today, so it was a little bit quicker for me to just kind of say, here's what we talked about last time. But you certainly, they're all there, so you can watch them. And the same thing with our board meetings. You know, they're going up there. We're pushing a ton of stuff out for folks who have the want and need to get this information because they can't attend when they're scheduled for it. We want people to have as much information as possible to make the appropriate decisions for your children and for your family. That being said, that's like 5 minutes with no new questions. At this point, I think I'm going to say, I'm just going to go back and say thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding and thank you for your cooperation. We've got a solid plan for our kids to come back, for your kids to come back and be with us. I will tell you that there will absolutely be things that we have to adjust as kids come in, and as more sets of eyes get put on things. There'll be people who say, "Hey, what if we did this just a little bit different? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that?" And we'll make those adjustments to the best interests of our children that are coming back to school, as well as all the staff members. If the way I've approached it with everybody throughout this whole thing is that if everything we're doing is very difficult and very challenging, but if all the hard work we're putting in and all the discomfort that we're feeling and have to feel to do things this way keeps it so one person doesn't get ill, then it's totally worth it. You know, I truly feel that. So I'll leave you with that thought. And again, I'll thank you for coming and have a great day. It looks like the sun is shining in Fort Edward. So if you're able to, get outside and enjoy it.